You're going to want to take advantage of any time that you have available as a parent with your child, because that time is so precious, to give them a life that's not just all about this. And that is going to form the foundation of their self esteem, of their genuine competence. I think it's going to give them something to come back to. If they do need to desist or detransition down the line, it's like at least their whole sense of self isn't based on gender, right? And it gives them the roots of competence, because I think a lot of these kids are using gender as a shield, especially I see it with the girls. This swagger that one of you mentioned earlier that they adopt, the sort of masculine identity that they adopt is like a shield of a tough guy that can face the world, that isn't weak and vulnerable and isn't going to be sexually exploited and isn't going to be made fun of like the bullies made fun of them in sixth grade, right? So it's like they construct this alter ego to take the place of having to have a fully formed personality, which they don't have yet. So they like to hide behind this alter ego. But the more of a genuine sense of competence you have based on lived experience, the less you feel the need to hide behind an alter ego. So why not give your kids that, right? Even if they're still using whatever pronouns with their friends and stuff that you can't control, at least you can have those experiences with them where they're getting good at archery, or they're getting good at painting cars, or whatever the heck it might be.
Agree. And that's advice. I shouldn't say advice. That's what I say to some parents is like, think of something that like the hole needed to be filled, and it was filled with gender. So think about
Yes.
for the future, when the gender's gone, you have to have something to replace it with. And that's not up to the parent to decide necessarily, but it might be good for them to think on those terms that like it's about filling the hole with something that's more wholesome and more sustainable and, longer term. But I think it's just hard to see, hard to find what that looks like. And I think going to the past is a really good idea.
Well, like for me, my son was engaged in all these activities and sports. He was an athlete. And when gender came, he gave it all up. So it was really hard to get him to go back to stuff. So I know a lot of people give the advice, do sports, do this. And I'm like, well, he gave it all up. And so it was very hard to get him back into anything. So I know it's a struggle, but it does help. But I think taking them out of their environment also helps a great deal. Going on a huge family trip if you can, um, and just get them off the phone.
It's so tough, especially with the sports thing, because physical activity is, we all know, so good for your mental health, self-esteem, social skills, um, but there is this body dysmorphia component where boys who think they're girls or want to pass as girls don't want to develop muscle, right? And then girls end up wanting, sometimes girls have eating disorders or trying to starve themselves so that they don't have their feminine body fat. So it can be really hard to get kids to behave in ways that are physically healthy, because they're telling themselves this lie, well, I can't get comfortable in my body because I don't look like this. And no, I don't want to be athletic. And no, I don't want to look, And so some kids are going to benefit from going back to things that they loved before. And some kids are going to benefit from finding some new interests, and maybe you play a role in that as a parent, and help them find what those new things are, or maybe not. But like, it's like what you're saying, it all comes down to, at the end of the day, more time in the real world and outdoors, less time on screens, more quality time, and more of life just being about life, not everything being wrapped up in gender. And that's for your own sanity as a parent as well.
Yeah.
So, sorry, you were about to say?
Well, I was reminded in the very beginning, I know that a lot of kids go online and they take these gender tests, and they're told, oh, sorry. They're told, a lot of kids go online early on, and they go and they take these gender tests, and it tells them if they're a man or a woman. Just for the record, I'm a man.
Oh
I
yeah,
took the
me
test.
too.
Okay,
If you
good.
Google "Am I trans" and take the quiz,
Yep.
and like, spoiler alert, you're all trans, right?
Well, there's also
Yeah.
the if you even think you are, then you are. And I think that
Mhm.
really was powerful for a lot of people early on. I think that has been dispelled a little bit as time has gone on. But that seemed to be the one thing that was the hook for people. was like, oh, like it's the done deal. And I think that's obviously changing a lot. Um, but I have found, just pointing out the absurdities of gender stereotypes in passing, not even with regard to me or my kid or my family, but just it's silly to think that because I wear pants that makes me non-binary, or because I like to fix things that makes me a male. Like that's silly. So we do have to, like you just said, we have to encourage them to embody themselves as they are, regardless of how they identify. Like that's the least interesting thing about you.
But as for parents, it's a really tough place to be. I mean, you just whole world has fallen apart and it's really hard not to be depressed, lose yourself. And so I have found doing this blog and helping parents has really helped me. It gives me a purpose. It gives me something to live for. And I know that Gigi's activism has helped her. So we do encourage parents to try and do something to help yourself so you can help your kid. Because if you're happy and you're doing okay, it helps your kid look at that and think, oh, well, this, my parents are okay, so maybe I should be too. I know how easy it is to just lose yourself over this. I just really encourage people to write. I encourage people to, if you think of something to do that might be helpful, then do it. Because, as Aaron Friday will say, no one's coming to help you. What does she say? What's her saying?
She did. The cavalry is not coming. You are the cavalry. Like we are,
Right.
we are our own rescuers.
And Josie,
So,
I've seen what you're saying from personal experience. It really seems like the families I work with that are doing the best are the ones that are able to keep a light heart through the midst of all this. The ones that are able to maintain a sense of humor and playfulness. My goodness, that gets you so far. And I have heard families report back these breakthrough moments with their kids where they were able to respond with levity to something that they'd been fighting over for months or even years. Right. So when you yourself are well, when you are staying well enough that you can laugh at some of this stuff and sometimes depending on the nature of your relationship with your kid, that's going to be like, that's ridiculous, sweetie. What on earth are you talking about? Right. But it's the tone, right? That can bring your kids back. Whereas, the same, that's ridiculous. What on earth are you talking about is going to land so differently. So a lot of it does come back to self-care. And I know that's no easy feat given the situation that you find yourselves in. So I'm aware of the time. Any closing thoughts before I ask where people can find your work?
I guess keep talking. And I've said this every time I've talked to anyone, just please keep talking. Any moments you have out in the world where and I found asking a question is a much better approach. What do you think about, Chloe Cole, or what do you think about the school board decision that they just voted yesterday in California to not keep secrets from parents. And it brought up a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of different opinions. Um, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's about gender or it's about something else. Like parents and children should not be divided by this. And I think that's what's happening. And so we need to remind ourselves that we have to keep asking questions and talking about this. And I think that's really the key, is it allows other people and gives them permission to do the same.